Hi, we're Oxygen Conservation, and this is the Shoe Room Sessions.
So important. I mean, we try to remind ourselves with a bit of a mantra that like focus is saying no, which is a really difficult thing.
Yeah.
In a space that's so kind of nascent and dynamic, where opportunities are everywhere. And as a startup, you just want to grab them. But
You've got to be incredibly selective.
Yeah.
A no is very cheap. A yes is very expensive. So we've got that with recruitment at the minute. So we're just hiring a new photographer. 743 applicants in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So every yes to an interview is 2 or 3 people spending a couple of hours looking at that person, and then every yes to a final assessment day. So we put people through. Exactly. And every yes you're saying is a no to something else and a no to another candidate. So I think that's the big difference in the sector now from when I first. So I've been in the environment sector. If you go back to degree 20 years. Pace is the difference now. So 20 years ago, the environment sector was intentionally slow and methodical and careful. We don't have time anymore. Like we burnt through those 20 years doing nothing. And now it's like, got to get on with stuff.
Agreed.
We should probably tell people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I guess we should. I'm Rob Godfrey. I'm one of the co-founders of Treeconomy. So we're based here in the UK and an earth tech startup that works to supercharge nature restoration. We're here to close the nature finance gap, to work with project developers, those on the land, provide them with the data, the insight they need via remote sensing, and ultimately deliver trust and traceability so that those projects in nature restoration can get the money they require to scale.
Awesome. Assuming you haven't yet, but if you do write your life story and we take the book off the shelf, what are the key chapters that make you who you are and what you do today?
Yeah, I don't know how far back I ought to go with the biography, but I think the journey to today, I guess, and a focus on environment starts pretty early for me. So I mentioned from Canada.
Whereabouts?
I'm from Toronto. Okay. So grew up in the big city as far as big city goes in Toronto, but I had the great good fortune of doing that quite Canadian thing of being able to attend summer camp. So I got to spend the summers as a child up in the woods of Northern Ontario, paddling around in a canoe and hiking and enjoying nature as I knew it then. And I think that definitely seeded in me a desire to explore wild spaces, but also to restore and protect wild spaces. And so I went and studied ecology and environmental science at undergrad.
In Canada still?
In Canada, yeah. So that was not far from Toronto. And I didn't quite know what I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to learn about everything. And
Do you know what you want to be now?
It sounds a bit of a cliche, maybe, but impactful. I mean, significant through service. I want to be able to sort of reflect on my life and feel as if I made a difference, according to my ability with in the biggest challenges I see. And for me, from those early days, those have always been climate change and ecological breakdown, basically. And so that there's sort of a green thread, I guess, that kind of runs through my career, which has been a little meandering from that point.
I've had 100 people sat in this chair and no one's has been linear.
Yeah. So I think I've remained focused on sort of impact, but it's taken a few different guises. So I did that degree, and as I said, majoring in ecology, environmental science. I got to spend some time on exchange.
Did you enjoy formal education?
I did, actually. Yeah, I did. I was very curious, and I think one of the challenges for me was focus. My curiosity was sort of peripatetic, and I did that interdisciplinary degree, but specializing where I was able to in ecology and environmental science. And I did enjoy the chance to learn, and I was all right at it as well.
I was terrible as a formal student. So Chris, who you know, our director of natural capital, he refuses to believe I was a terrible student, but came to learning or the appreciation of that really late. I just wanted to play sport and lift weights, and I was there to do that. And it wasn't until I really got into reading and had an expression for the learning. So I don't read fiction. I only read sport or business or biographies, because I'm like, oh, these are lessons I can apply to the business. So unless I have an application for something, it doesn't mean anything to me. I need a framework to drape it around and then can use it. So that came late. Education was wasted on me. I think when I retire any minute, because Penny keeps saying I'm getting old, I'll maybe go back to university then and do something interesting. I won't.
Yeah. No, I did like it. I think I can empathize a little bit with the yearning to apply though. So I spent this exchange semester at the University of Washington in Seattle, Pacific Northwest, and that was pretty formative for me, and I can definitely trace the journey to Treeconomy back to a lot of what I learned there, and that was a great deal more applied. So learning about restoration ecology, practicalities of conservation biology, working with endangered species, managing resources, natural resources, and it was really my introduction, I guess, to forestry and forests as a natural climate solution. So I actually owe a great deal to my time and my short time in the Pacific Northwest, and sort of, opening my eyes to nature-based solutions, particularly forest and forest restoration, as kind of win-win-wins, and that really attracted me. The chance to deliver benefit for biodiversity, for climate, and also for rural livelihoods, and that kind of never left me. And so I really enjoyed that. Things became or I guess a yearning grew then to kind of apply what I knew a little more practically.
What was fun during that time? So when you weren't studying, what did you do for fun and enjoyment?
Yeah, I mean, I spent time hiking when I was able to. Have always been pretty involved in sport one way or another. A lot of running, cross-country running, for example, and trying, as often as I was able to get out there and in the green, So,
I think you just hit upon the title of your podcast.
Did I?
In the green.
In the green, yeah.
Works on so many levels.
So that was important for me, and then I sort of had a stumbling, I guess, into like a brief affair with academia, funnily enough.
I am sorry.
What's that?
I am sorry.
Yeah. It wasn't long, but again, it was formative, and I think it was an important stop along the way, definitely, to what Treeconomy has become. So I went home to Toronto, and I got a research position at the University of Toronto, something called the Centre for Global Change Science. So it was an interdisciplinary research institute pulling together different faculties and researchers from across the university. And I wound up, by great good fortune, in a forestry lab, actually. And so working on biochar, which may have come up on previous program. I worked in that lab, but over my time there was also fortunate enough to get out into the field quite a bit, and involved
Sounds like
kinds of projects.
You actually tried to find those opportunities. That was important.
Yeah. It didn't just land in my lap. I wanted to pursue that, particularly after being sort of introduced to those subjects and forest management and forest science through my time in the States. And I did all kinds of things, but one of the projects was to take part in a forest census, and that meant I was back up in the woods of Northern Ontario, walking around, pulling tape measures around trees, trying to answer what seemed like straightforward questions, like how much carbon is in this forest, to what extent is it contributing, carbon sequestration, and all the while thinking there's got to be a better way of doing this. And so that sort of the penny started to roll, and some years later it would drop with Treeconomy, but thinking about the potential applications of technology to speed up that process, to help in answering those questions more reliably, and then I guess growing an awareness for how that tech and the trust that it can contribute makes a difference, i.e. in environmental markets, in more reliably measuring carbon.
When you were putting that tape measure around the tree, did you know that environmental natural capital markets were a thing or would be?
I did. I'd been sort of introduced to sort of voluntary carbon markets 1.0 not long before that, and there was interest through the lab as well in the ways in which biochar could generate carbon dioxide removal credits, which is something that's in the 10 years since really exploded, particularly in the last several. So I was aware of environmental markets, and I was drawn to the idea through them of being able to prove the lie in this sort of notion that ecology and economy are fundamentally at odds. I guess I wanted to land somewhere where I could do both. I could do both, basically.
Have you read much of Charlie Munger's stuff? Berkshire Hathaway.
I know a bit about Charlie.
So one of our amazing board members gifted me a copy of Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is a book of his speeches and topics. And a lot of his early thinking and speeches is about the need for that interdisciplinary approach, and how historically education was far too siloed and fragmented and would have the economists against the ecologists. And a big point of his was the abject rejection of psychology from a lot of sectors. So they wanted to talk about economics but not really understand the psychology of people. And it's funny how, you know, your early education was founded in those interdisciplinary things.
Absolutely.
And I think it was when I found those sort of crossovers and I kind of call them conceptual collisions of ideas from different areas. When you bring those together, that's when the real exciting, innovative stuff starts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when people ask me what I studied, the short answer is ecology and environmental science. I earned a degree in arts and science and managed to study a huge range of subjects, and that was intentional. And I always felt, I think, a little bit sheepish about not specializing more or earlier in the way that, you know, maybe peers of mine had, where they were tracking towards a future in engineering. And really all I knew was that I wanted to somehow work for the benefit of the planet and against climate change and ecological breakdown. But
Isn't it funny, the stories we tell ourselves that like you need a specialism?
No, I sort of, I don't know, it sort of sat uneasy with me, and I for a time felt I needed to commit to something far more specific or narrow tracked. And I think looking back, I am grateful for the breadth, and I can recognize that as a strength now.
Definitely a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. Particularly in setting up a company, which is not something I'd really foreseen for myself, at least, you know, back in university.
And was there any family history of entrepreneurship or business and things like that?
To be honest, not really. Not really. I've got an uncle who started a business and built it successfully, but it wasn't something that was much talked about or encouraged. Not that it was discouraged, but it was never really presented as one of the options, either family or at university. In the program I studied, they went on to become, you know, doctors, lawyers, and the rest. But there's a real natural fit when it comes to that range and breadth and sort of, I guess, synthetic ability. When you're working on something like this, or, you know, building a business, and in the early days you've kind of got to do everything.
Yes, so you do.
Coming to gradually appreciate that as a benefit.
Nice. Okay, so keep us moving through the journey.
Yeah, so after my time in the woods pulling tape measures around trees, I concluded that it was a fixed term research position, and I was fortunate enough, I guess, by coincidence, to stumble into a role with what at that point was a quite early stage clean tech startup in Toronto, and I met someone basically who happened to be the CEO of the company through the fellowship program that had sent me to University of Washington in the first place, and I applied for this job at this company that at the time was focused mostly on building energy efficiency retrofits, so LED lights and that sort of thing. And it felt like an awkward left turn, but I was persuaded by the opportunity to achieve impact, to reduce emissions, the built environment, and to be given a lot of responsibility in a company that was maybe only 15 people at the time. And I stayed there in project management and then operations leadership role. I was in my early 20s, and the business grew from 15 to 160 in 2.5 years. So that was a ride, and I learned a lot, and I think grew as a huge amount. Someone entrusted with a lot of responsibility so early in my career, but
were you leading people too early?
I might have been.
Yeah,
I had a team. I was responsible for lots of teams and subcontractors, and I definitely felt a strong imposter syndrome at time, but. I was entrusted with a lot of responsibility, and I think it really sort of supercharged my.
What do you think they saw in you to give you that responsibility?
It's a good question, actually. I have to ask the man that hired me. I think possibly work ethic for one thing, and I think. Yeah, there's probably perceived that I was just a hard worker and someone who could maybe figure things out in what was a relatively low structure environment in those days.
Do you know where your work ethic comes from?
Yeah, good question. Insecurity, maybe. Not sure. A desire to, to matter and to not let others down. I think a sense of responsibility, of service. I've got family members who are public servants, and I think that was instilled in me early on. The importance of looking after others, and also if you said something to honor your word and to do it right and to do it on time. That might be part of it. I'm a twin as well, so it might be partly the natural competitiveness that comes from that drives both me and my sister, at least to an extent. But yeah, not entirely sure.
So I always found myself in leadership roles. I never knew why. You'd go to a meeting, and even if you were junior in the company, the chairs would be angled towards you. People would wait for you to speak. And I don't think you can really. I think you can help people improve as a leader, and you can give them a set of managerial skills. Yeah. But I think there's an inherent natural aspect to leadership. You don't get to decide; other people decide. Yeah. And you can turn that up, but I don't think you can teach it verbatim. Mine certainly came from sport. Work ethic wise was very much my parents worked essentially manual jobs. I had a pretty shitty childhood, but what I got from them was you have to work for everything. And then when I started playing sport at higher levels, I was like the worst athlete on the teams I played in by a mile, and I just had to outwork everyone to be there. And I learned that and carried that into business. And it was like, oh. Yeah. Okay, if you just outwork everyone, that leads to better things. So keep doing that.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. No, I think, hard work is, undervalued skill. I always thought that's what I brought to things, as much as anything else. And
was there anyone in your, so you're in senior role, massively growing company at that point. Yeah. Who did you talk to? So when you'd have had hiring challenges and firing challenges and logistical challenges, firefighting all the time. Who did you talk to? Was there a friend on speed dial? Was there a mentor of some kind? Who did you bounce things around with?
Yeah. I mean, I had some mentors. I mean, I had good fortune of an uncle who'd built a company, as I mentioned, and he was often on hand to sort of coach me. I think I, in retrospect, probably struggled to ask for help, even at those difficult moments, as often as I probably should have done. But no, he was certainly a mentor. Yeah.
They're so important, right? Like
absolutely.
I was. This was a pure aspect of luck. My sort of career trajectory. So my sport, academia, public sector. In the public sector, the performance standards are really low, so you'd have to do a lot. So it meant I had a lot of capacity to help anyone who asked. So a lot of the senior directors would ask me for favors to help with pieces of work. So as my career ramped up, as I found myself in senior rooms, I'd done favors for all the people in the room to help them in what they were doing. So it meant I could go, oh, you're the expert in this. Can I ask your opinion? Can I ask your opinion? And it was very reciprocal. It wasn't because I'd built up the credibility of helping people. They were like, sure, I'll give you that advice or help. So it's always my thing to people at the start of their career, do as many favors for as many people as you can, because it only leads to positive things.
Definitely.
And don't do it to get something back. Do it because it feels good to do it. The flip side of that is you will get better back from the world in the end anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So those were important 2.5 years for me. Definitely.
It's like a professional MBA quickly, for like real time.
Yeah. No, it was that for me. And going in, I didn't expect to spend 2.5, nearly 3 years in that role, but I think came out of it, accelerated.
So did the company exit at the end of your period, or what was your?
No, the company's still there, and while I was there, was one of the fastest growing in the country, and continues to grow. I left, I think, because of what I learned, and what excited me about the company, or what it represented, and that was the chance to leverage enterprise as a force for good, basically. And so the people surrounding me in that company, and many of them that founded it, weren't intrinsically or morally motivated to do any good for the environment, but they'd hit on a business model and selling a product and services that, over the course of my time there, kept millions of tons of carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere. And I thought, aha, there's something I can engage with, right? I'd sort of flirted with the academic track, but enterprise, markets, business as a potential force for good was something I hadn't really had the chance to explore until I got there, and then decided I wanted to pursue it further. And so I actually quit, first of all, to walk from Prague to Vienna with two good friends and do a bit of a backpacking trip. We'd promised we were going to complete many years before, and then I applied for something called the Global Sustainability Fellowship, which was a relatively new program at that time, and basically they were gathering mostly young environmental leaders together to try to introduce them to the concepts of systems and design thinking, basically. And so I spent a month in Israel learning about systems and design thinking as applied to wicked challenges like climate change. And I wanted to test, I guess, and interrogate this inkling I had, that maybe looking at business was a meaningful lever to actually enact some change in the world. And I had the chance to bounce that idea around and really scrutinize it, and understand what I was, and articulate what I was looking for in terms of systems dynamics, looking for high leverage points and nature-based solutions and environmental markets to fund them. They seem like such a high leverage opportunity, again, to achieve these win-win-wins, basically, for the climate, for biodiversity, for people. And so that just drew me further and helped to kind of reinforce my desire to take a look at the intersection of business and the environment. And so at the end of that time, at the end of that program, I was resolved to learn more. And so throughout it, I'd been throwing in applications to various programs around the world that kind of at that business and environment intersection. There are not as many of them as you might think, or we might hope. But one was at Imperial, so I applied and was accepted, and then decided to go and to study what's called the Center for Environmental Policy, to do a master's in environmental tech, but with a specialism in sustainable business. And it was a fantastic year and a half I spent there, and it was there that I had the good fortune of meeting Harry, my co-founder. And so if I'd come from the forest and a couple of years, I guess, in a fast-growing clean tech, Harry arrived from the other side, from the city, and a couple of years in finance and wealth management. And so we had different but really complementary skill sets and the sort of shared frustration, I guess, around things not moving fast enough, particularly when it came to nature restoration, our ability to leverage finance into high quality nature restoration. And so there was a real mission alignment, and that was kind of where Treeconomy was born and leapt out of.
I love it. We really seem to be at the time of the co-founder now. So you go back to all the tech startups in Silicon Valley, where I think that's when I first came across the concept of entrepreneurialism and business startups and things like that. But it was always the founder. Whereas now it's much more the zeitgeist that co-founding relationship's so important, that synergy of the two. I'm hugely fortunate to have co-founded Oxygen Conservation with the Oxygen House group. So I don't just have one co-founder, I have a group of us, which is amazing. And they've provided unbelievable support that's allowed us to scale at the pace we have. Can you talk a little to the advantages of going through this journey with a co-founder rather than flying solo?
Yeah. No, I don't think I'd be, a founder if I didn't have a co-founder, if that makes sense. I think it's, it's essential. It's be a incredibly lonely and arduous road. And I think it's important to realize that no person is good at everything, and to sort of find the yin to your yang. And as I said, I think Harry and I have really complementary skills, and we're different in the best ways. You don't want a clone of yourself, I don't think. And so, Harry offers things that, and brings skills that I haven't got, and vice versa. And there's also just and it's not to be discounted, I think, or undervalued. There's a camaraderie and a companionship as well. And
people talk about like founding and leading a business has been a very lonely experience.
Yeah.
Do you think that the two of you together mean you've avoided some of that?
I think to an extent, yeah. I do occasionally find myself wishing that I had more peers, if you will, within the context of a small company. More mentors, something we've talked about as being important. I think I'm committing myself in this next sort of chapter, I guess, my career and for Treeconomy, finding that sort of advice and support. But a lot of it does come through the co-founder relationship, definitely. I can't be a difficult thing to do this.
I know, having spoke to Harry, he would say the exact same thing about you. So I think there's definitely a mutual love and admiration there, which is great. So tell us about the business today. Just describe where we are and what it looks and feels like.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, Treeconomy's been going for over 5 years now.
Really? I hadn't read.
Yeah. I mean, things were sort of bubbling along.
So you said just before us. So we're 4 in June this year.
Yeah. Congratulations. It's amazing how the time is flying.
It distorts time, doesn't it, when
it's extraordinary. And it's amazing as well, I think, just how fast things are advancing in a really exciting way.
It's a privilege to be in this. Totally agree.
We're lucky to share and play in and to shape. So it's been just incredibly fascinating. But we started all that time ago. And we used our time at Imperial in different programs. Mine at the Center for Environmental Policy, Harry's over at the Business School in Climate Change Management and Finance. We used that time to kind of examine the business, the idea for the business as it existed then, and to try to kind of validate some of the key assumptions. So we put our respective thesis terms to work in reviewing opportunities for nature-based carbon removal, for example, and the need for increased private finance towards nature in Harry's case. And so we liked what we saw, or at least those investigations kind of validated the opportunity and certainly the need. And in those days, though, we thought we were going to be a vertically integrated sort of full service owner, operator, measurer, monitorer, and seller of nature-based carbon credits. And so when we began, we thought we'd do the full stack, and that, I think that's given us a lot of empathy. It's a great experience trying to design woodland creation projects, for example, measure and monitor them with drones, and take those credits or future credits to market. I think we spent a year, maybe more, in that mode. It was tough sledding, but it was valuable tuition.
And were you working full-time on the business at that point?
I wasn't working full-time on the business at the earliest moment. Well, I guess that's not entirely true. I mean, after our master's degrees wrapped up, COVID hit, right? And it was a difficult time for so many reasons.
Yeah.
But I also have to thank COVID in a funny old way, because I was coming to the end of my degree, and we had something that looked promising, received some support from Imperial Enterprise and their Venture Mentors program, and there was encouraging signs that this was a business worth building. But we had bills to pay, living in London, but nobody was hiring for sustainability consultants, say, the sorts of things I might have been able to offer to the economy coming out of that master's program. And then COVID hit, and no one's hiring. And so I actually went home to Canada for a little while, moved back in with mum for 6 months, and continued to work on the business, no pay, and thankfully no rent. And moving along.
Yeah.
And then I eventually I wanted to come back to the UK, really for the business's sake. But again, we weren't really in a position to pay ourselves or anyone else. And so I got a job with the NHS. So I worked for Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children as a sustainability manager there, for about 18 months actually, working on Treeconomy sort of evenings and weekends as I was able to. But we were fortunate to win through that period a bit of grant funding actually related to the pandemic. It was Innovate UK money for a green COVID recovery. And we secured that, and that allowed us to pay Harry and to pay our first 2 scientists, who I'm pleased to say are still with us all these years on. And then we continued to grow as the business is a very small team, and we're fortunate to win some more Innovate UK funding and raise a small pre-seed round, and that allowed me to launch in 2 feet full time.
Amazing. And how many people are you now?
We are, it's changing, 15 full time now. Yeah. So, still a relatively small team, mostly based here in the UK, but not exclusively. And, we've got a commercial team focused on taking projects sort of to market and supporting project developers, land stewards, in getting a fair and compelling price for their carbon credits, for instance. We've got a science team. That's really where we started, who are responsible for building the analytical tools so that we can process drone and satellite data to measure and monitor these sites, de-risk them, present them to the market. And then we've got product and software engineering, data engineering functions as well that have built our platform we call Sherwood over the last couple of years, through which we offer our DMRV services, basically.
And how do you divide your focus and Harry's focus? Where do you cross over?
Great question. He gets to do all the fundraising, thankfully. No.
Genuinely thought you were going to say he gets to do all the fun bits.
No, I don't think we class fundraising as one of the fun bits.
No one does
necessarily. Yeah, it's a great question. I think in the early days, it's so everyone's got to do everything. I mean, that's not entirely true. Obviously, we hire scientists and allow scientists to do science, but as co-founders, there's so much asked of you, and you have to
turn the lights on, take the bins out, do literally everything.
Yeah, everything.
And I love the analogy that you fire yourself every time you hire someone.
Yeah.
So you literally fire yourself to be replaced with someone who's better at
the HR person any longer. I'm not the accountant any longer. Yeah. I've fired that part of me. Yeah, it's a great way of thinking about it. And I'm so delighted we've got to fire ourselves in different ways as the team has grown. But it's still a lot. And so we've broadly sort of defined or delineated, I guess, our focus and attention according to who we're interacting with the most in the market. And so I spend most of my time on the supply side. There is, undeniably like a two-sided nature to how we work. We're focused mostly on the supply side. So groups like yourself that are working on the land and actually trying to make a difference in nature restoration. And so we'll offer our services and baselining, measurement and monitoring to those groups. And that's where I spend a lot of my time. But enough of those project developers and land stewards over the years have said to us, your maps are lovely, your monitoring is helpful, monetizing is even better. And so for that reason, we've got teammates, and Harry's leads a lot of this work. We're responsible for assisting those projects to market, taking advantage of that data to de-risk the projects, instill trust, traceability, transparency, and to coax, purposeful, hopefully patient capital towards these projects. And so Harry spends more of his time on the quote unquote demand side and interacting with nature finance, whereas I commit more of my time to land, to our project developer partners, where it all starts. So it's kind of an up funnel, down funnel division, I guess.
What's your favorite part?
It's my favorite part. The variety is exciting. It's still, and there is still variety in what we're doing. I'll be speaking to someone in Brazil one day and someone in Zambia the next, and coming down to speak on a podcast in North Devon the day after that. So it hasn't gotten stale, even after half a decade behind Treeconomy. So I think
the longest you've ever done one thing for?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, me too.
I guess it would be actually, Rich. I hadn't actually considered that, but it is. Yeah.
And I think that's possible because you're not doing one thing.
Yeah.
You're doing 100 things every day.
Yes, completely. And I think that that sort of satisfies my desire for novelty and also for growth. And I get to become not expert, but hopefully conversant in a lot of different things in a way that I find really rewarding and gratifying. And then of course it is the satisfaction we get from knowing and going to bed each night realizing we're making a difference. We're nature projects are out there now that wouldn't exist without our support. And we're just one part of the ecosystem. But it helps to, I don't know, salve my anxiety, my eco-anxiety, which is totally rational, by the way. We shouldn't sort of pathologize that. But the worry I feel, the buzzing, nagging worry I've been feeling for many, many years about our planet's predicament, coming off the sidelines and doing something, giving my all, however small my all is, through Treeconomy, it does help me sleep at night.
When the hundreds and thousands of people watch your podcast, that was the quote that made them want to work with you. Literally, that there was very inspiring. Well put. You mentioned earlier about how sort of unique and privileged a time it is for us to be in this sector now. Yeah. It's an absolute sort of rush of a convergence of the realization, respect and appreciation for the nature that we're losing, but also the tech and the technology to make what you do possible. Talk to us about how tech plays a role in that and what the future of that might be.
Sure. Yeah, no, the tech has come on tremendously in the last couple of years. I mean, this is a space that 5 years ago was quite manual, tape measures, for instance, and we and a bunch of other fellow travelers, I guess in nature-based solutions, have been taking advantage of Earth observation, remote sensing, the proliferation of data that we can now use from satellites, from drones, to better understand the natural world, to better measure, monitor ecosystem services like carbon sequestration, and crucially to harness that again for trust, for traceability, for transparency, to reassure people that nature restoration is real and impactful, and not just greenwashing. And so, I mean, the tech is something that we're building, but we are also fortunate beneficiaries of these exponentially improving enabling technologies, right? More satellites, for example. AI is a good example as well, in the way that AI foundation models have improved over the last few years, such that we can train and fine tune them for ever better and more reliable insight. It's hugely exciting. And these things are getting cheaper, better, faster, stronger. And so, yeah, I mean, reflecting on where we started 5 years ago, to give you an example, I think the best satellite data we could buy or task over a native woodland creation project would have been maybe 3-meter resolution. I mean, 3 years after that, we've got 30 centimeter satellite data, right? It's not quite Moore's law, but it has been exponential, and the pace of it is really exciting.
What's the future potential impact of AI as we see it more and more?
What's the future potential impact? It's a question we get a lot, particularly around AI related emissions, which is something we shouldn't shy away from talking about. And it's got huge relevance for our sector for all kinds of reasons. So we'll start there, basically, and talk about the benefits. So what was it reported? I think in Microsoft's last sustainability report, for example, and this is consistent among the big tech companies, they reported their emissions had increased something like 30% year on year, mostly because of data centers and energy demand driven by increasing AI usage. And so that's enormous. And it means we should be thoughtful about how and discerning about how we're applying AI tools, particularly sort of generative and generalist AI tools that are enormously computationally intensive, but we are at Treeconomy. So we're very careful that we're not sort of smashing a walnut with a sledgehammer when it comes to reaching for AI where it might not be the most appropriate technology. The other side of this, gets a bit circular, is that those companies, the Microsofts, the Googles, they are major environmental market participants because they've got net zero targets, and as their emissions soar.
I mean, in the voluntary sector, they are the major.
They absolutely are the vanguard in voluntary carbon removal, and even with the political winds being as they are right now, they remain committed to those net zero targets and may remain huge buyers and pre-purchasers of especially nature-based carbon removal. If you look at things like the Symbiosis Coalition. And so they're only going to need more high-quality carbon credits.
So interesting point about the political winds, certainly in the US. So I was asked for some comments on this last week. Now, I might be a perpetual optimist here, so bear with me. I don't think in the long term, no, it's not. I hope in the long term, the anti-environmental, pro-business rhetoric that Trump and Musk are applying in the US, I'm hopeful that's actually positive for nature markets for the following reasons. One being that I think governments are too big. I think civil and public services are far, far too big and bureaucratic and too slow, and have put in place a whole series of regulations that we just don't enforce. So the best businesses follow them even when they're illogical and unnecessary, and they're actually slowing down and improving environment. And I think if you look back at successful investment hypotheses and theories, they do not follow the prevailing zeitgeist. So when everyone else is saying, oh, let's go the Trumpian way of slash and burn, now, yes, that will have immediate negative impacts on woodlands and forestry and additional drilling, and that is terrible. However, so much capital, like we've seen an acceleration in voluntary carbon credit sales over the past few weeks and months. And I think the sensible, bright investors will be positioning capital, the patient ones you talked about, for the end of that government period. So I think we're going to see a parallel acceleration with hopefully a simplified bureaucratic environment. So actually, fingers crossed, we look in 4 or 5 years, both the natural capital markets have moved on to a point whereby we're somewhere near where we need to be. Now, that's perpetual optimism coming out, but right now I'm choosing optimism in the face of fear and despair.
Yeah, and you have to for sanity's sake. No, I can see what you're saying. I think there have been encouraging signs that smart long-term money is continuing to enter this space.
There's an opportunity for alpha if you go where others aren't. And if the bulk of less discerning, less sensible, less long-term investment is going left, maybe we go right or
and sensible investors are making those bets. I think the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, right, 1.6 trillion under management, has just redoubled its commitment.
BlackRock do the same thing, literally stating that.
BlackRock just came out with a statement on the importance of natural capital and is committing to growing their presence in that as a.
If we'd have talked about that 5 years ago, no one would have believed that was even possible.
Absolutely. That is one of the biggest changes. And we talk about the tech, and the tech has an enabling role in giving people and finance confidence to engage in
and
nature
speed.
And speed, crucially.
I think that's the transformative part.
But there's been an absolute mainstreaming. I mean, we weren't able to utter the words natural capital 5 years ago without getting quizzical looks, right? We had to talk about trees only as, despite our recognition that there's so much more than that, carbon removing machines. Because the voluntary carbon market, there are two sides to it: buyers, the suppliers, and the nature financiers. They weren't there yet. The space is sophisticating. We have insurance. We have large asset managers that are now committing to investing in nature for all of its benefits beyond carbon, but as something that generates positive economic as well as ecological returns. And that has moved on enormously. I mean, when BlackRock starts talking about something, you're approaching the mainstreaming in a way that we're really excited about.
Yeah, and they have the potential to make single transactions that create entire markets.
Absolutely.
Like, do you think about what the future evolutions of some of those things would be? So, for example, a lot of the focus in the UK is on carbon market, voluntary carbon markets. We've now got BNG that's really ramping up and seeing some positive successes. And the Scottish government released a piece a few weeks ago about the importance of nature markets in Scotland. And I know there's been some institutional investment that's finding its way there. Do you guys think about what those future markets might look like and how you might position beyond carbon?
Yeah, no, we absolutely do. I think there's our current approach is sort of rooted in a pragmatism and just an awareness of where the market is right now.
Yeah.
You know, irrespective of how fast it's moving. And so we sort of subscribe to a quote unquote carbon plus model, right? The voluntary carbon market isn't perfect. That's one of the reasons we do what we do. But these other ecosystem service markets, particularly voluntary biodiversity crediting, it's exciting to see them coming online slowly, and the demand just isn't quite there yet. And so we'll work with the tools we have, basically adopting, what we would call a sort of bundled rather than stacked approach to get money for nature, and projects that do more than just suck carbon out of the atmosphere, basically, returning a premium for quote unquote co-benefits. And, I agree with a lot of people, and my training originally in ecology will say, co-benefits, it's a bit of a pejorative term. We'd like to sort of center these benefits, and I agree with that. But if we're not yet in a place where those discrete markets exist, I'd rather get more money through nature by adding a layer to carbon that takes account of biodiversity, however imperfectly. So that's sort of where we stand right now. But I'm excited by the way things are developing.
Are you cited on any of the work that Rob Gardner and you Murray are doing at Rebalance Earth?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm really excited about the sort of potential of recurring revenue streams their work with insurers and big corporates could bring for things like flood management and water quality improvements and things like that. Because I think almost to the general public, they're a much easier conceptual service. Nature as a service makes more sense than a carbon unit even, because it's invisible, you can't see it. Whereas, knowing a farmer's field is full of water because it's lowering a flood level downstream, that makes sense to people. It's really interesting how something that's conceptually easier to grasp at the moment is harder to monetize.
Yes.
But I think we're going to see that flip. And once there's a recurring revenue stream on a natural capital product, that's transformative again for the sector, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what this strikes to, and it relates to this, this sort of gradual financial mainstreaming, I guess, of natural capital, is a realization that nature is a form of green infrastructure, or at least that's one way of looking.
Yeah, how do you feel about that classification? I don't know what I think yet.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it as a useful framing to get finance people on board, and to persuade them that they know more about funding nature than they realize, because they funded things like renewable energy, right? And we've seen offshore wind development, say in this country, booming for years with financial instruments that are now being applied really successfully in the natural capital space. So we have power purchase agreements that have been, have made a major difference in getting wind and solar built. We can use carbon purchase agreements, carbon offtake agreements to similarly fund the creation of forests. So there are there are definite parallels there.
We literally had an announcement on that last week with, I think it was Meta, funding an entire purchase of a forest through forward pricing of carbon.
Yes, that's right. I think in the Olympic Peninsula, yeah.
That's right.
With EFM. So, yep, they've committed, they've locked in their demand for those future units in the way that a buyer of energy would do.
Just finished reading an awesome book called Pattern Breakers. You come across it?
I don't know.
It's about how it's the fund that's behind some early backing for Airbnb and Tesla and companies that really changed the game on how something was done. And they go with a very strong view of so Airbnb to a traditional hotel was such a change that if they'd have tried to badge it in the language and the ways of working of a hotel, it wouldn't have worked. Right. So they'd argue against the green infrastructure thing because that's language and conditions and frameworks and structures that make the concept more easily accessible to people. Yeah. So that's one end of a spectrum. Use those like Trojan horses or those gateway drugs of concepts like renewable energy or regenerative agriculture, things that make it easier. Forestry. They're the three pillars that people find it really easy to get into natural capital. Yeah. But you go with like a premium nature-based carbon credit or a nature credit unit. It's very different. It's a new language, it's new systems and processes. So I think you've got a whole spectrum of tools to work with there. And I think my passion is more towards this create new, aspirational, exciting environment. But actually, because of the way we've constructed the portfolio, we own the underlying land, we're overlaying carbon on top of that. We do elements of strategic property. We've got renewable energy. We've got BNG units. We've got a rent roll. We've got ecotourism. And we've got regenerative agriculture. I've effectively done that as a result of how we've put together a portfolio. But everything we talk about and position in terms of our natural capital is that creative part of it. So I don't know where I sit on this spectrum of green infrastructure. It kind of feels a bit, I don't think it feels authentically oxygen conservation. I understand how the language helps. And yes, of course, we're doing something that's helping the environment. And the flood side of things is an obvious example. Like natural flood management is better than concrete. Of course it is if we can do it. But I'm just not sure about the terminology yet. So
it doesn't feel complete or holistic or necessarily as inspiring or
just don't know if it feels true to what we're describing. But equally, one of my things is everything's complicated. There's shades of grey in all of it, and you have to be willing to sit and accept those contradictions if you're going to work in this sector.
Totally. And I think however imperfect those metaphors, those comparisons, those analogies, they can get you in the door, basically. Particularly with the world of finance that needs to be made to feel more comfortable. Basically, with nature as something new, and so we're ever trying to remind them that it's a risky and sort of nascent space, but we've channeled tremendous investment towards risky and nascent industries.
I think we need to ban the N word, nascent.
You're right. Maybe we should.
I think because what isn't. Yeah, it's like the people who talk, it's a really volatile time in the minute and everything's changing. It's like, do you think people thought it was different in the 60s? Yeah. Or the 30s or the roaring 20s or what have you? We had John Elkington on the podcast.
Yes.
I adore John.
Fantastic.
So Green Swans is one of my favourite books. I read it really early in the start of OC, and I wrote to him and said, one day, John, we hope to be a Green Swan business. That's what we want to be. And bless him, he's just proofed my first book for me, and he sent us a beautiful quote saying oxygen conservation or a green swan, and I was like, oh my word,
validation.
Like a literary hero. He kind of slapped me around a bit on the podcast. I don't know if it made the final edit, but I was like, we might see this market come in 10 or 20 years, and he was like, no, that's old school thinking with AI and the pace of change. I mean, you're talking like 2 to 3 years, Rich. Do not talk about 10 to 20, talk 1 to 2. Sure. Did that make the edit, Penny? Yeah. So I love that. I was like, how amazing is it that the 75-year-old, sorry if I've aged you, John. No, he's 75, right? Maybe. Sorry, John. The godfather of sustainability is telling me who's supposed to be the disruptor. Go faster.
Go faster.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think we have a tendency, don't we, as humans, to generally underestimate the pace of future change. We tend to draw linear projections, basically. This is an accelerating space.
A big project when we started in the environment sector. In fact, no, not when we started. Last week, there was a press release about a £30,000 project in the environment sector with people high-fiving and hollering that was... Now, we need all of them. Of course we do.
Absolutely.
BlackRock aren't putting out a press release for £30,000.
No.
That's a rounding error they're not even reporting. Let's put out the press releases for £30 million and £300 million and £3 billion. And that's what's changed in the last few years and what needs to change again. You know, we have hugely, hugely blessed to be sat on a £200 million portfolio of land for conservation. What happens when that's a £2 billion portfolio for land? The impact on that, on all the companies across the ecosystem you describe, the MRV experts, the deer managers, the fencers, the tree, all those businesses need that scale, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What are you excited about for the business for the next 1, 3, 5, pick whatever time domain you want. Just take us to the future of Treeconomy.
I mean, I think in the next year, we're expecting to ramp up our work internationally. So
it's really exciting,
which is hugely exciting. I mean, we got our start here in the UK, and by number, the majority of our projects remain here in the UK. But it was never the intention to stop at the UK. Right? The UK is counterintuitively to some people has been a great place to begin. I think because, among other things, the landscape is so nature impoverished, and because as a small and crowded place, this is a center of natural capital thinking. This country, there is a necessity to sort of manage and think about trade-offs on land, food security, development, climate, nature across every hectare, in a way that, you know, just frankly doesn't exist back home in Canada. And so there's a sort of a sophistication around, when it comes to environmental economics and natural capital thinking here, which I think we've kind of built into the business, and we benefit from an ecosystem of partners and innovators here. But then the need and the opportunity is so great, looking at areas of the global south, for instance, right? Biodiversity is not equally distributed. We want to be supporting the area, areas of the world that are biodiversity hotspots. We want to ensure that carbon markets, among other environmental markets, are acting as a force for environmental justice and redress. When we could be moving money from areas of the global north that have polluted us into this crisis and crises, to areas of the global south and the stewards that actually manage and maintain the lungs of our earth. And so for those reasons and so many more, I'm really excited that we're increasingly working in places like Brazil, Colombia, Congo, Nigeria, and looking forward to doing more of that in the coming year.
I love how you describe the Centre for Natural Capital Thinking. So we had my friend Charles Courtney on, who's the Earl of Devon, sits in the House of Lords, incredibly bright guy. He's also a dual qualified lawyer who practices in the UK and the US. And he thinks the next great international export we have is our systems and thinking and processes around nature and natural capital. And I hope it's true. And I think we've had some meetings with the new government, and I think if they begin to realise the potential that we have there, companies like people like Greg at Octopus Energy and what they've been able to do, we can roll out that same level of thinking. The future unicorn companies of the world are in the UK in terms of natural capital, because we can roll that out globally and hopefully do so much positive impact in the process.
I think so. And the way I'll often frame it is that scarcity begets or necessitates creativity and invention, right? And we see that across so many fields. It's no wonder that drip irrigation was born in the desert, for instance. And it shouldn't be a huge surprise that natural capital thinking is growing in a world-leading way in a country that, when it comes to nature, is relatively impoverished. And that contrast is very clear when you go to a place, or come from a place, as I guess I do in Canada, where nature, or at least land, wildlands, is relatively abundant. For example, right? We are wasteful and profligate with our resources, and we don't think much about land because it feels it feels infinite in many parts of the country. Just as think about water, because it's always coming out of the tap in Canada. But nature is not boundless or endless, and we confront those limits every day in the UK. And so it seems totally natural.
You are the first person in over 100 people sat in that chair to make that observation and link. That is awesome. And it's right. You're absolutely right. There is a necessity and a need. And it's why there's so much conflict around land and use and people so impassioned about it, because there isn't plenty to go around. There could be multiple uses to all of it. We sometimes get asked, how do you know what the right use for a piece of land is? No one does. You try, there's a range of opportunities, and we try and listen to the landscape and the environment and the ecology and know what's there. But we're all dealing with shifting baselines and changes and climatic things, and what was right in the past might not be right in the future. And there isn't an element of land in the UK that hasn't been influenced by human intervention. So we're dealing with an already adapted landscape. Absolutely. Rob, it's been an absolute joy having you sit down with us. I've got one more question to end on.
All right.
If there was one question I haven't asked you wish I had, what would it be?
Ooh, that is a fantastic question. I guess I would have loved to get into rewilding and what that means, I think, as a sort of controversial and sometimes contested term. So I would have loved for you to ask me what rewilding means.
Let's give it a whirl. What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, to me, rewilding is about not just mitigating the harm that we commit to the planet, but actively reversing it. And that is something that has attracted me for a long time, and that I still believe in strongly through Treeconomy. I wrote my undergraduate thesis on woolly mammoth de-extinction. Right, the idea that we could bring back extinct Pleistocene species.
If Chris is listening to this, no, you are not having a woolly mammoth yet.
No, not yet. But companies like Colossal Biosciences are only a few years.
They're the ones with the mouse.
They're the ones with the woolly mouse, yes, and the dire wolves more recently. So it's fun to see something I was musing about many years ago, gradually coming to reality.
That's every idea, though, right?
Yeah.
Everything that's ever existed started as an idea and as a joke and as a ridiculous thing. Remember, the first person I felt confident to say out loud, "We're going to manage £100 million for conservation," literally laughed. Literally laughed. We're now managing 2. They're not laughing now.
And I think on that, I think audacity can be a competitive advantage. There are fewer competitors for the big goals, basically.
I once read, every goal's incredibly difficult, so why not have an audacious one that's worth achieving?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think rewilding the planet is absolutely one of those. And so we're setting our eyes high and looking to fund and support the restoration and rewilding of millions of hectares of land around the world. And I think it's important because there's a hopefulness to that, basically, that this doesn't just move in one direction, that the story of our interaction with the natural world doesn't have to be one of just ceaseless, unending exploitation and degradation that we accept and that becomes our new baseline with every generation, right? And so rewilding to me at the highest level is about undoing that harm. And I'm really excited by the ways in which tech, for example, the drone-based sensing that we do can measure, monitor, and help in securing finance for much wilder, truer forms of nature restoration than just tree planting. So the work we've been privileged to do at the Nep Estate, for example, looking at the process of ecological succession that has been underway there for a long time. That's you only have to visit. I'm sure you probably have, Reg, to see that's good for the planet. But it's not easily quantified with tape measures. A little more easily quantified with a 3D point cloud. And so in better understanding these processes of rewilding and the outcomes that they realize for the land, we have a chance to build confidence in them and attract finance towards them, so we can make more NEPs on a bigger scale in more places. And I think that is a hopeful vision.
Love it. Rob, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. I'm so glad you and Harry are doing what you're doing in the sector. We need a whole ecosystem of superstars, and we've got 2 more with you guys, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Rich, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.